our
foals prancing and playing, but never straying too far from mom. For the owners and breeders, the many questions are real. Do I have a champion? How fast will he go? For now, the fantasies live for all. Will the foals live up to their royal pedigree? Will they go beyond? Of the thousands born each year, only a portion will make it to the races. Only the finest will go postward in the breeder's crown. And those who emerge victorious will be recognized as racing's kings and queens. Tonight, live from Pompano Park on Florida's Gold Coast, it's Ladies' Night. The 3-year-old filly pacers and trotters go to the post with divisional honors at stake, and not to mention a whole lot of money. Breeders' Crown 87 is being brought to you by Castleton, a tradition of excellence. By U.S. Air, the official airline of the Breeders' Crown. And by Tom Cunningham Livestock Insurance Company. It's the November summit of the 3-year-old set, and ladies first, so the fillies, who are going to be on the pace and on the trot, will be in the spotlight. The Glamour Colts will have their chance next Friday night. Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Johnson from beautiful Pompano Park, where it's about 65 degrees and windy, and you are watching History in the Making right here at Pompano as they host the first ever racing program in Florida with purse money totaling $1 million. And we're not talking about just harness racing. We are talking about all breeds. And the stars of the sport are here tonight for another brilliant chapter in the Breeders' Crown, our championship series of races from coast to coast, now in its 4th season. Ellie Sarama and Alan Kirschenbaum will be joining us shortly, but right now, say hello to our old pal Stan Burstein. And Stan, not just the big money and purses, not just divisional honors, we're even looking farther ahead for these fillies.
Well, many of them are ending their careers with tonight's races here. 5 of them in the pace have won over $500,000, and one of them, time well spent, over $1 million. The significance of their careers is that they now go to the broodmare ranks, many of them, and undoubtedly because of their pedigrees and their performance will produce the coming champions of the sport.
We started this evening in the pacing ranks with 17 dangerous fillies. We will narrow that down to 8 for our finale, and let's find out how we got to that 8 figure and maybe get a clue as to how they're going to do in the contest. Let's go now to the winner's circle, and here's Alan Kirschenbaum and Ellie Saram.
Thanks very much, Dave. One of the reasons the Breeders' Crown was brought about was so that the voters who cast the ballots for divisional honors would have one good last strong impression before they cast those ballots and determine the divisional champions. And Ellie, tonight those voters will be watching very, very carefully because this division's been wide open.
Alan, it's been wide open all year, and towards the end of the season, just when you think one of these fillies is going to cinch that title, another filly pops up and goes an exceptional mile. Time well spent, Pacific, and Armbro Feather are all at the top of that list. And a win in the Breeders' Crown tonight final will not only capture the crown, but it may even capture divisional honors.
Pacific drew into the first division, along with Nadia Lobel, a filly who was brilliant last year at 2, and she is come back to the races, another brilliant filly. In the second division, it was headed by Time Well Spent and Armbro Feather. But here in the first division, Pacific has reached the half in a fast 57-3 for Tom Harmer. She's generally on the front end in her races. She's there tonight. Midia Semalu has gotten a very good trip after an alert leave by driver Ben Cote. And on the outside, Ingrid Lobel is ranging up first over. Far back at this point, Ellie, are both Nadia Lobel and No Smoking, and Pacific appears to have things well in control.
She does there, Alan. Tom Harmer rested her the middle half. He did have to use her hard going to the quarter pole. He never crossed over until the 3/8. But Nadia Lobel is following second over here behind Ingrid Lobel, and she gets in all kinds of road trouble. John Campbell has to tip her 3 deep. It cost him some racing room, but Pacific's still in full control of the race.
She sure is. And if they get to the top of the Pompano stretch in 127 and 2, the free-legged filly, you see she wears no hobbles, is lengthening out impressively. Nadia Lobel is going to close in very gamely on the far outside. She was far back early and kept narrowing the margin with every stride. She looks to be fit and ready. The race went in 155 and 3, and Pacific wins very handily. There are the prices. Pacific was first, Nadia Lobel second. Midias Semelu got a good trip to be third. No Smoking was not on the board per se, but the fourth finisher does make the final. They made the final in the second division. The half was reached in a blistering 55 and 2 by Armbro Feather, who was a little rank early in the post parade, and she went right to the front here. JJ's Win Song has made a pull to apply the pressure on the outside. And right now, Ellie, you wonder if that very fast pace is going to take its toll.
Well, coming back for a second heat, Alan, you really don't know, but Armbro Feather is on the lead. She ended up parking Tawdy Taw Bluegrass, who got to her too late, so he didn't want to let her go. But he was here very comfortably with JJ's Win Song, really in striking distance and looking very strongly here at the top of the lane.
One could forgive John Copus if when he looked over and saw JJ's Win Song and Henry Fillion, he was not that worried. She was over 20 to 1 at post time, but look at JJ's Win Song dig in. Is this not a game, Filly? On the far outside with lots of pace was the favorite, Time Well Spent. That is Bill O'Donnell wearing a different set of colors. His was lost in an airport snafu, and he's wearing dark blue, but JJ's Win Song lights up the tote board. 42.80 to win at 20 to 1. Armbro Feather, very game, 155 and 1. The Time Well Spent, and Mercy fill out the field. Let's go back upstairs to Dave Johnson.
Well, let's take a look at how they will line up for the finale of the 3-year-old pacing division. The winners of the 2 eliminations drew for post positions 1 and 2, the second place finishers for 3 and 4, and so on. So here's how we will go into the finale with JJ's Win Song drawing the rail and is 7 to 1, and the driver is Henri Fillion. Pacific will start from post 2 and is 3 to 5. These are current odds, not the morning line, and Tom Harmer drives. Nadia Lobel with John Campbell is sitting at 2 to 1 right now, the third choice. Armbro Feather with John Copus is at 30. Time Well Spent, the 5-horse, is at 7 with Bill O'Donnell. Media Simbaloo at 99 with Mickey McNichol, and 99 the price on No Smoking with Rod Allen. And Merci with Ben Webster starting from post 8 on the outside at 50 to 1. And we'll be back with more from Pompano Park, the filly division of the 3-year-old set. We'll be back after this. The history of the 3-year-old filly pace turns out to be a microcosm of racing itself. The favorite, confidently driven by Tommy Houghton, Naughty But Nice. Steinem beating Amneris on the wire, and Glow Softly at 32 to 1 from last to first.
From the outside, Forever Sparkle. Then it's Breeze Free. Coming down the stretch toward the finish. And there is from the inside. Steinem from the outside. And there is from Steinem. Post finish, and here they are.
And on the outside, Follow My Star with a tremendous burst of speed. Follow My Star is taking the lead. Glow Softly has Danny on the outside. And right there in between horses with a late first. And taking the lead, Clarence from on the outside. Glow Softly is 2-1 to call.
Let's check current odds for the finale of the 3-year-old pacing fillies. JJ's Win Song has now been bet down to 4.5, and Pacific is up to a generous 4 to 5. Nadia Lobel hangs at 2 to 1. Armbro Feather is at 12 to 1. Maybe a big price there. Time Well Spent, the 5-horse, is at 6, and then we come to 3 long shots. Media Simbaloo at 70, No Smoking at 90, and Merci on the outside at 50 to 1. Well, in some of our past programs, our jewel of the crown has been an owner, a trainer, a driver, a horse. Tonight, the jewel of the crown is a piece of machinery and a gentleman whose career actually parallels that special piece of machinery. Let's join Stan.
This is the start of the 1943 Hambletonian, which was raced that year at Yonkers Raceway in New York, then known as Empire City. It is the start, but there is no starting gate. Harness racing in its early days had no gate, and the fate of the field, and to a larger measure, the entire sport, was in the hands of the starter, who gathered the horses together and sent them on their way. This is the machine that made modern harness racing possible. The very first mobile starting gate, mounted on a Model T Ford, invented in 1937 by an Ohio starter named Steve Phillips. It was a crude beginning to a brilliant idea, but it took Phillips another 9 years to sell it to the people who then ran harness racing. One of them, a New York lawyer named George Morton Levy, gave Phillips money, encouragement, and a green light to try the gate at Roosevelt Raceway in New York, which Levy had founded in 1940. Phillips began the long process of refinement and improvement, replacing the early cumbersome mechanical units with more sophisticated and efficient hydraulic mechanisms. He worked in the same old airplane hangars on Long Island in which Charles Lindbergh prepared the Spirit of St. Louis for his historic flight to Paris. And the gate was first tried in 1946 on the track at Roosevelt Raceway, which almost exactly paralleled the takeoff strip that Lindbergh had used 19 years earlier. As far as harness racing is concerned, Phillips' invention was in some ways just as historic. It changed the face of the sport forever and opened the way to the tremendous growth that followed. Delvin Miller, your great career as a trainer and driver spans almost 60 years, so you obviously raced without the starting gate.
I raced about 17 years before the starting gate came.
What was it like?
Oh, it was terrible, Stan. You know, you couldn't beat the #1 horse. They call him the pole horse. And the starter would stand up there with a bell, and if somebody was ahead of the pole horse, he'd ring that bell, and when they were all in line and not beating the pole horse, he'd holler, go.
How many times could that happen?
Well, I've seen him score 17 or 18 times. It happened in the Hamiltonian in 1943 once.
What happened with Doc McCoy? I know there's a great story you tell about him. He was one of the leading starters of the era.
Well, he was one of the great old starters, and he was having an awful time. I think it was at Springfield, Illinois, at the state fair. A lot of people there, and he was having an awful time. They were trying to beat the pole horse, the #1 horse down. He finally called them all to stand. Gentlemen, come to the stand. And they all come up, and one was headed one way, one the other way, all over in front of them. He said, this is the first time I've had you SOBs together today. Go!
Delvin, there was opposition, however, when the starting gate, the mobile starting gate was introduced in 1937 by Steve Phillips.
Yes, because there was people knew they couldn't beat it, and the people that was taking advantage of the starters, which they would, were against it.
Well, it's revolutionized harness racing and made the modern sport possible. And throughout the modern sport, this man has played a leading role. Delvin Miller, thanks very much.
Thank you, Stan.
And some night we've got to have an hour just for Delvin Miller's stories. We'll be back with more from Pompano Park after these important messages. Stay with us. JJ's win song is 5-1. Pacific holds as the 4-5 favorite. Nadia Lobel with John Campbell at a dangerous 2-1. Armbro Feather is up to 12. The 5-horse Time Well Spent is at 5, and then 70-1 on the 3 long shots, Media Similu, No Smoking, and Merci. Let's get the thoughts of Alan and Ellie in the winner's circle.
Well, things are back to normal right around here. Ellie and I are disagreeing already. The only thing we agree on, though, is that in the second heat of a filly race, a lot of times the horse to watch is the fresh horse. We've chosen 2 different fresh horses, however.
You're right, Alan. My fresh horse is Pacific. She put on last quarters in 28-1, first quarter in 28-1. Tom Harmer had her very well in hand. I think she's the best in here.
Well, she did race on the front end, but I agree she didn't have a lot taken out of her. My choice for the fresh horse in here is Nadia Lobel. I think both JJ's Winsong and Armbro Feather really had really tough trips in there and should be a little exhausted, but Nadia Lobel saved all the ground, was not used hard by her driver, John Campbell, who knows this mare and has a lot of respect for her. She's drawn well, she has the 3-post, and I think she'll be the one with all the pace at the end. Let's go back to Dave.
Stan, I have a question about the horse that George Steinbrenner owns a piece of, Pacific. Off for 43 days before her elimination this evening. Can she come back with another giant mile?
Well, it's a question because it was an amazing performance coming off that long a layoff. Even thoroughbreds who sometimes go as much as a month between major races when you go 43 days, it's exceptional to see a horse come back and do what she did in the elimination.
So Pacific still is the favorite here with the folks at under even money. Nadia Lobel with John Campbell, certainly a very interesting racehorse from the first crop of No Nukes.
I think the most interesting aspect of it is the fact you have two drivers, Tom Harmer with Pacific and John Copus with Armbro Feather, who both love the lead and don't like to give it up. If they get locked up in an early speed duel, we might see either JJ's Windsong or Nadia Lobel at the wire.
And JJ's Windsong, the Iron Lady, with 34 wins and 51 starts lifetime. She's always been on the front end, but came from 6th in the elimination. She's dangerous coming from behind.
Done most of her racing up in Canada around Bluebonnets and in Quebec, but she was extremely impressive in winning.
And we're getting ready for the start of the 3-year-old pacing fillies. Let's go upstairs and Gary Seibel for the call of this race.
And now they swing on to the max stretch. Over $400,000 on the line in likely divisional honors in this Breeders' Crown. And there they go. They're off and pacing. On the inside, JJ's Windsong sent out for the lead. On the outside, Merci going up at the back of the pack. Armbro Feather is off stride. And now from in between horses, Pacific takes command. But JJ's Windsong keeps her parked out. Merci is settled in third. Nadia Lobel away fourth. A gap of 2.5 to Time Well Spent. Then we come back to Media Similou, followed by No Smoking and Armbro Feather quickly making up ground. Opening quarter, 28 seconds flat. And now they come by the stands the first time. On the outside, Pacific trying to clear and to get to the wood, and now she finally does for Tom Harmer. Back to second, JJ's Windsong. Merci a closer third. A gap of 2 to Nadia Lobel, 2.5 back. Time Well Spent fifth. Media Similou racing sixth, followed by No Smoking and Armbro Feather now right there trailing the field. Over to the half, Pacific on top by a length, right behind her. JJ's Windsong, Nadia Lobel moves first over the half, 56 3/5. Second quarter, 28 3. And now they're on to the backstretch, and it's Pacific on top by a length. On the outside, closing ground, Nadia Lobel, the rail third, JJ's Windsong. Time Well Spent into the outside flow fourth. And now going up fifth, Media Similou. Merci sixth at the rail, followed by No Smoking and Armbro Feather into the final turn. Pacific the rail. On the outside, Nadia Lobel, 3/4, 126 2/5. And now they're into the final turn. Pacific the one to catch. Nadia Lobel the outside. Here comes Time Well Spent and Billy O'Donnell 3 wide and full of pace. And as they hit the top of the lane, it's Pacific. She's leading the pack and trying to hang on. On the outside, Time Well Spent. In between them, Nadia Lobel's not done yet. JJ's Windsong, 4 of them coming to the wire. They are heads apart in a tight photo. Pacific maybe hanging on in the final strides. The mile in 1:55 flat.
What a finish. Pacific answered a lot of questions, and maybe Tom Harmer was able to hold off the late charges on the outside. It's a photo finish, but let's watch the stretch drive again. Harness racing at its finest. They got to the quarter in 28, the half in 56 3, 3/4 in 126 2, and Pacific, who had finally gotten to the wood at the first turn, is going to hold off the late charges, at least unofficially, through the stretch. Let's watch it again. Time Well Spent, I thought, with Bill O'Donnell was going to win it all. That's Pacific on the inside, and from between horses, I believe that's Time Well Spent. No, I think that's Time Well Spent on the extreme outside. In any event, it's a 3-horse photo, and I think it's just simply too close to call. We'll have to wait for the photo.
Nadia Lobel won a big race, too, and win, lose, or draw, Pacific, great training accomplishment for Tom Harmer.
We'll be back with the photo and the official after this.
Accepted.
And the photograph showed, yes, it was Pacific holding on the inside with Nadia Lobel second and Time Well Spent finishing third. Unofficially in the photo, JJ's Windsong fourth back. And now it is official. The winner is number 2, Pacific, paying $380, $280, and $280. Giant miles this evening now with 16 wins in 19 starts. The 3-horse, Nadia Lobel, in a heartbreaker, gets beat a whisker and pays $360. I didn't catch the show price. Time well spent was third. JJ's Wind Song finished fourth. Armbro Feather broke and really lost all chance at the first turn. Now, let's go to Alan Kirschenbaum.
I'm joined by Tom Harmer here in the winner's circle, who has driven Pacific to the slimmest of victories. And Tom, were you worried about your filly's long layoff before the race?
Yeah, you got to be concerned because she was a little bit off. She got a little sick. We just kind of babied her along for the last 5-6 weeks. But she's a great filly, and she come back super, and you got to give her a lot of credit.
We're going to take a look at the replay now and pick it up just as they passed the stance the first time. And Tom, did you expect to have as much trouble as you had in securing the lead?
Yeah, I figured it was going to be tough right from the get. Henry's horse is just really good on the front end, and I beat him. He sat on my back. I still beat him. I didn't figure he'd let me go too cheap. But I figured somebody would be coming, but evidently they didn't.
At this point, Pacific is on the front end. JJ's Windsong is nestled in right behind him, and here comes John Campbell and Nadia Lobel. Are you worried about Nadia Lobel as one of your main competitors in here?
Definitely. She's one of the top competitors. All year she's been that way, and right now I got her right where I want her, and JJ's Windsong is in a nice spot.
You're able to back off the third quarter, 29-4, giving your filly a breather. John Campbell just riding alongside with Nadia Lobel. Now he'll go to the whip. Time Well Spent, who's usually even farther out of it than this, is in a very good second over position. Do you think maybe Billy O'Donnell and Time Well Spent are going to have good kick at the end of the mile?
Time Well Spent's always had good kick. She's coming right now 3 deep, and she lost a little ground on this turn, but she made it up down the stretch, and my mare's just awesome. She just hung on.
If ever there was a test of gameness, it's right here down at the wire. Nadia Lobel in the middle of the track, Time Well Spent on the far side of beginning to narrow in, but Pacific just digs right in.
She's a tough mare. She's done it all her life.
Congratulations to Tom Harmer on winning the Breeders' Crown. Let's go back upstairs to Dave Johnson.
And let's check the entire order of finish top to bottom. And there in the winner's circle, Pacific. First under the wire by a nostril. Nadia Lobel was second. Time Well Spent finished third. JJ's Windsong was fourth. Merci fifth. No Smoking was sixth. Media Sembaloo was seventh. And Armbro Feather finished eighth. We'll be back with more from Pompano after this.
Bear with.
Welcome back to Pompano Park, where Pacific has just equaled the track record on a very windy night, posting a 155 victory in the Breeders' Crown. Congratulations to driver Tom Harmer, trainer driver Tom Harmer, the breeders Lister and Schurer of New Jersey, and the owners, the Sierra Stable, Charles Day and George Steinbrenner. Presenting the Houghton Trophy in the winner's circle is Mr. and Mrs. William Simon. Bill Simon, of course, the former Secretary of the Treasury, one of America's leading economic figures, as well as one of harness racing's most prominent owners, and a co-owner of Pompano Park. And Ellie, Pacific, as game as they could be, beating my choice, Nadia Lobel, by a nose. You got me that time in a terrific performance.
Well, Alan, it really doesn't matter how much you win by. It's that you win. But this filly was an absolute outstanding performer tonight. Tom used her again hard early, and she still had plenty enough to keep these horses off.
Congratulations once again to Pacific. Let's go back to Dave.
Well, that settles the championship in the 3-year-old filly pacing division. And as we take a look at the prices, we see that Pacific paid $380, $280, and a mirror $280 to show. Nadia Lobel $360 and $3, and Time Well Spent pays $3 to show. Stan, they don't get any closer than that.
They don't get any tougher than that filly either after that long layoff. Her name, Pacific, she crossed it several times. Her dam was a New Zealand mare by an American horse, brought to the United States, bred here, taken back, came back over again. Pacific, of course, came back herself, and I think she was bought for $35,000 a year ago, which was a pretty good buy. Nadia Lobel, incidentally, Dave, who won $615,000 last year, had won less than 70 going into tonight's race, which shows you the stock market isn't the only erratic operator these days.
And you know, George Steinbrenner, part owner with his friends of Pacific, doesn't like to finish second in anything, and Pacific in 29 starts has never finished second. She hasn't won them all, but she's never finished second, and she keeps that record intact tonight. So Pacific, a fine filly, proves it and gets the crown here this evening. You know, in harness racing, Well, the perception, I guess, has been that it's a man's business, but there are subtle changes throughout the industry, from the back stretch to the front office. And with another filly story, let's join Ellie Sarama now with an interesting sidelight.
Over the past few years, the opportunities for women in harness racing have greatly increased. The most obvious example is the growing number of female trainers and drivers. But there is an equal and maybe larger rise in the female population behind the scenes. We found a great example earlier this fall when the Breeders' Crown visited Cleveland's Northfield Park. The brilliant trotter Grade Singing, one of the most successful females in the history of harness racing, was center stage Breeders' Crown night. But in the wings, both Cindy Swanberg, who worked her way up to be Northfield's Mutuals manager, and Mary Calabrese, the assistant general manager of the Cleveland track, were doing their jobs as well as Grade Singing was doing hers. Business is booming at Northfield, and Cindy and Mary are a large part of the reason why.
Traditionally, racing has been considered a man's sport. I know one of the things that racetracks try to do is encourage more women to come, because we think it's a sport that is interesting to all people.
I think that the one advantage you have of having women on staff who are in key positions and are being seen by other people is the fact that women aren't so afraid to come to a racetrack now, because it definitely used to be a man's haven to come and get away and go out and gamble for the evening. But now on a Saturday night, there are couples that come to the racetrack, and there are young couples, and there are young ladies who come by themselves. I mean, you know, 2 or 3 young ladies together. And I think women now are coming to racetracks because they see it as not as a gambling facility, but as a night out, and because they see women working in those positions, they feel more comfortable.
The climate for women in harness racing today is more favorable than ever before, but the road to success is not a short one. For Cindy Swanberg, it took a great deal of hard work and determination.
When I started in the mutual department in '75, I believe, and I worked my way up and was a seller, a cashier, money runner, you name it. My father started me at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak. You know, you're going to work your way up, do it all.
There's an added incentive, I think. They have something to prove. In fact, probably they feel representative of other women in the industry and don't want to blow that opportunity. So they seem, I sense that they work a little harder, which is good if you're a general manager of a racetrack.
The 3-year-old Filly Trot division should really be known as the William O'Donnell division, for the 39-year-old Canadian has won all 3 editions, in '84 with Fancy Crown, '85 with Armbro Devona, and last year with Jeff Spice.
The Breeders' Crown Filly Trot belongs to Armbro Devona. Jeff Spice is still there. Right light, low bell, looks for racing room.
Hello there, everybody. This is Mel Allen. We're in the 9th here at the park. Whitey Ford going with his favorite, Mickey Mantle betting on his long shot power. It comes to this. Pompano harness, great entertainment, great pari-mutuel action, great gourmet dining, and now Sunday racing. Take it from Whitey Ford and Mickey Mantle.
Pompano harness racing's fun. You can bet on it.
Pompano harness.
Post time 7:30, Sunday 7 p.m.
Falcons. We're back at Pompano Park, and we're moments away from the post parade of the 3-year-old trotting fillies. And Stan, have you ever seen a season where so many championships are really coming right down to the wire?
Right to it. This race, of course, particularly between Armbro Fling, the 8th filly ever to win $1 million on the trot, and Keystone Harem. And, of course, next week we have the 3-year-old Pacers and Mac Lobel and Napolitano.
So it certainly has been an interesting season, and it really all does come down to the Breeders' Crown.
The Crown is doing exactly what it was designed to do.
Now let's take a look at the trotting fillies of the 3-year-old variety in our post parade for the 12th race here this evening, and it's the Breeders' Crown. Alan?
$390,000 on the line for these 3-year-old trotting fillies, and there's number 1, 1/3 of the entry, Armbro Flory.
All 6 of her wins this season have come when she has raced in an opposite division of her stablemate, Armbro Fling. She's been so consistent all year and has been on the board 16 times out of 20 starts.
Armbro Flory, one of the 3 Armstrong brothers' own fillies that represents the entry. Her entry mate number 1A is Armbro Fling.
This filly is the strongest part of the entry. 13 wins to her credit, including the Hambletonian Oaks and several other Grand Circuit events across the country. She looks like the one to beat.
Number 1B is Calm Down. She's the adopted Armbro sister. She was bred by Kentuckiana Farms, Calm Down was. She'll be driven by Mickey McNichol.
She's the weakest part of this trio, with only a mere 66,000 made this year and has not won a race yet either. She draws an outside post, and that's a definite disadvantage.
The 2 who'll be scoring from post position 3 is Sarah Gal. Barry Drury will drive.
This Ontario bred has just begun to get sharp. She's been in action mainly on the Ontario Sire Stakes circuit, but may find this field a little tougher than her Canadian competition.
I think she sure will, Ellie. Number 3 is a recent purchase. Sizzling Charm was bought for $290,000 by Irving Liverman, and she gets John Campbell in the bite.
She hasn't been at her best in the later part of the season, but her qualifier here last week at Pompano Park was a definite sign of improvement. She won by a 14-length margin with John Campbell in the bike, and that could make all the difference.
Billy O'Donnell going for his 4th Breeders' Crown 3-year-old Filly Trot with Victory Lomont.
Strong performances in the Midwest Grand Circuit events have convinced her owner to put her in the Breeders' Crown hunt. In her most recent outing against Age Trotter, she put in a very game effort.
Number 5 is Mamma Mia. The driver will be one of racing's great money drivers, Buddy Gilmore.
Comes off back-to-back wins in open competition at Rosecroft Raceway and should be tight for this race tonight, but she has never displayed the ability to beat these fillies.
One filly who has is number 6, Lucius Almerhurst, and Ben Webster will drive that filly.
She has been one of the most consistent competitors on the scene this year. Her lifetime mark came when she won a heat of the World Trotting Derby at DuQuoin and has shown that she has been a major threat against these horses.
The 7 is Genuine Comfort. The New Jersey sired filly will have Jimmy Takter in the bite.
The queen of the New Jersey Sire Stakes this season, winning 3 of 4 events at the Meadowlands and sweeping the 3 legs of the Sire Stakes at Freehold this fall. She has plenty of credentials, but draws the worst post.
Number 8 is Crown Starlet. Leroy Stultz will be in the sulky.
A New York Sire Stake competitor with lifetime earnings of over $500,000. She has raced against these fillies before and has fared rather well. She'll be starting from the 2nd tier.
Number 9 hails from Team Nordine. She is Keystone Harem. John Nordine will drive the 9.
The hottest filly trotter on the Summer Grand Circuit. She is the fastest filly in the field, winning in 53 and 4 at Springfield and won the World Trotting Derby in straight heats. A major threat in this race.
And rounding out the field, Ronnie Waples will drive number 10, Treasure Me.
In winning the filly division of the Kentucky Futurity, she defeated such horses as Lucius Almerhurst and Calm Down. Ronnie Waples was a star at last year's Breeders' Crowns with 3 wins. He already has 1 win this year.
10 talented fillies round out the Breeders' Crown field. Let's go back over to Dave, who has a special guest.
Well, Fred Van Lennep, who died earlier this year, would be so proud of his staff here at his beloved Pompano Park for bringing the crown back to southern Florida again and carrying on his great tradition. Our host, the president of Pompano Park, John A. Cashman Jr. And John, it's not just this one race, a lot of things happening at Pompano.
Oh, this is an enormous week, an enormous fall right up through the January 1st here in Pompano. And this is something that Fred Van Lennep would have been so proud of. And he worked and was diligent with this plant here for 25 years. And it's a dream come true for everybody associated with this establishment. We have the Breeders' Crown this weekend. We're going right into Sunday, starting a harness racing exposition here. It's the first inaugural one, which will run through Wednesday, which will bring somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 horse people together here in Florida to discuss the various problems and the new things that are taking place in the industry, like simulcasting and intertrack wagering and so many other topics. And then we're going right into a Breeders' Crown ball for the benefit of the Hall of Fame, which has already attracted the attention of about 750 guests participating.
That's terrific.
And it's great.
And the season doesn't end there. We go on until 1988 here.
Yes, we do. We've taken on the Matron Stakes, which start right after our Breeders' Crown Series, and we race right through until May 1st with the best horses and improved overnight events, and we're really thrilled about this meeting.
So if you're going to be in southern Florida over the winter, you want to stop by and see some fine harness racing here at Pompano Park. John Cashman, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Dave.
And we'll be back with more from Pompano, and we'll be looking at the 3-year-old trotting fillies in action in the Breeders' Crown after this brief timeout. Well, the 3-tiered entry from the Armstrong brothers, 6-5 on the tote board for Armbro Flory, Armbro Fling, and Calm Down. 3 for the price of 1. 70 to 1 is the price on Sarah Gal. Sizzling Charm is at 9 to 2. Victory Lomont is at 8 to 1. Also in the field, Mamma Mia at 25. Luscious Almahurst at 4. A couple long shots there. Genuine Comfort at 50. Crown Starlet at 30. Keystone Harem is at 5 to 2. And Treasure Me is at 30 to 1. Let's get some comments from Alan and Ellie on the trotting fillies.
And once again, you'll get 2 very different comments from Alan and Ellie on the trotting fillies. We just disagree, Ellie.
We certainly do, Alan. Last year, I picked Armbro Fling to win the 2-year-old Filly Trot for the Breeders' Crown, and I'm picking her again this year. Prior to the Breeders' Crown last year, the filly was not sound, and she really didn't have that much of a chance. But this year, she's coming into this race in peak form, and I think she's the best.
Well, maybe she is, and maybe you'll go 2 for 2 on the show tonight. But if one of her entry mates wins, don't tell me you gave out a winner. My choice in here is Keystone Harem. Although she is burdened with the 2nd tier, and I admit that's a problem, I still have visions of that 1984 Breeders' Crown 3-year-old colt trot when Jean Nordine won with Baltic Speed, leading 2 of the Nordine stablemates across the wire. Keystone Harem, the fastest filly in the field. She won in 1:53 4, and that is a hellacious mile for a trotting filly. She's been very good and came up to this race perfectly until she made a break at Rosecroft on a half-mile track, which I really don't think is her best sized oval. She's back on the 5/8 tonight. John Nordine is such a wizard in a trotting race, and if he can get her out of any sort of trouble early, I think Keystone Harem will win and tie me with Ellie with 1 winner apiece on the card. Let's go back upstairs to Dave.
Well, earlier tonight, I talked to Bob Hayden at the Meadowlands, and he's going to pass on the 3-tiered entry at 6-5. He thinks that Sizzling Charm with John Campbell is the horse to beat in here. A barn change now with the Canadian influence of Chuck Sylvester, and a big winner here with a race over the track and a 15-length victory in a qualifier. Well, Sizzling Charm certainly would have a little bit of value. Stan, anything stick out to you in the field?
Well, the thing that interests me is the fact that most of these trotting events, major ones this year, have been Scandinavian dominated. This one is not, and it is very heavily Canadian representation in it. But the Scandinavian representation is Jan Nordine with Keystone Harem and Jimmy Takter, Scandinavian, with Genuine Comfort. They'll have to carry the reputation of the great Scandinavian trainers and drivers into this race tonight.
I'm going to go with a real long shot, Victory Lomont, and certainly part of the reason is Bill O'Donnell, who, as we said earlier, has won all 3 of the 3-year-old filly trots in the Breeders' Crown. He took it with Fancy Crown, who crushed males, and then in the Kentucky Futurity, and then won by 4 in her division of the Breeders' Crown, and he won with Armbro Devona, and he won with Jeff Spice. I think he's got a chance with Victory Lomont 2 times over the track. It would certainly be an especially sweet victory for Billy, who is wearing somebody else's colors. That's what threw us off at the finish a little before. It's so strange to see blue and white.
Well, he got left in Norfolk today with a little plane problem, and the plane arrived later at Fort Lauderdale with his silks, and he arrived at Miami without them.
Well, we're getting ready for the start of the 12th race here. It's the Breeders' Crown for 3-year-old trotting fillies. And we have a whole gang full of horses, a 2nd tier. Let's go upstairs now. And for the call of the race, here's one of the best in the business, Gary Seibel. Gary?
3-year-old trotting fillies move on to the backstretch for the start of the Breeders' Crown 3-year-old Filly Trot. And there they go. They're off and trotting in between horses. Sierra Gal gets the first call. Moving up on the inside, Armbro Fling. Genuine Comfort trots up strongly from the outside. Victory Lomont in title, looking for a spot at the rail. Moving up on the inside, Armbro Flory also moving up at the rail. Right there, that is Crown Starlet. On the outside, going up, Keystone Harriman as they trot around the first turn. In command, Genuine Comfort has the lead. Armbro Fling is right behind her. Armbro Flory right there, third to quarter in 28 3/5. And as they trot by the stands the first time, up on the outside, Armbro Fling now takes command. Genuine Comfort back to second. Armbro Flory going up. And now a closer fourth on the inside, Crown Starlet. Victory Lomond parked out fifth. Treasure Me is sixth in the bulky field. Keystone Harem on the outside, followed by Sizzling Charm. Far back, right there, that is Sarah Gal. And as they trot around to the half, taking them there, that's Armbro Flory, 57-3. And now they're on to the backstretch. Armbro Flory by 2. Armbro Fling trotting second the inside and third, Genuine Comfort. And now Victory Lomond still closing ground on the outside. Keystone Harem moving with that cover. On the inside, Crown Starlet, Sizzling Charm, Treasure Me in between horses with Calm Down. Far back, Luscious Almahurst, Mamma Mia, and Sarah Gal. And as they head for the final turn, in command, that is Armbro Flory. Victory Lomond the outside, Keystone Harem coming on. Armbro Fling the rail, 3/4 in 1:28 1/5. And as they trot around the final turn, in command, that's Armbro Flory. And now Keystone Harem coming on 3 wide. Armbro Fling the rail, Victory Lomond. They are in the lane. Armbro Flory, the one to catch. Here comes stablemate Armbro Fling on the outside. It's now Armbro Fling, Armbro Flory. They drive to the wire. Armbro Fling in front. Mile in 1:57 3/5.
So it took 1:57 to hand the crown to Armbro Fling, the horse who earlier this year took the Hambletonian Oaks and had a chance to lose the title here. She won a lot of money in the New York Sire Stakes, but she has risen to the occasion as she has so many times. With 27 days off, Armbro Fling is the unofficial winner in 1:57 and beating her stablemate Armbro Flory, who's had a solid career of her own, but in the shadow of the Fling, just couldn't get it done tonight. Armbro Flory is second, and Armbro Fling is the unofficial winner. Let's take a look at the stretch drive again. It was Armbro Flory coasting home after reaching the 3/4 mark in 1:28 1. But up on the outside, Armbro Fling with George Sholty, who trained this trio of trotting fillies, and Armbro Fling is just gonna, I think, just breeze on by. The 1A horse, who started from post position number 2, gets the crown this evening, and it is a photo for the place. But 1A, the unofficial winner, George Sholty, driving Armbro Fling, who wraps up her divisional title with this victory if it stands official. We'll be back after this. There's a photo sign on the tote board, so we'll wait. Unofficially, Armbro Fling first under the wire, and a photo between Genuine Comfort and Armbro Flory for the place and show spots. But let's go down to the winner's circle and Alan Kirschenbaum.
George Sholty has joined me here in the winner's circle. He has just piloted Armbro Fling to a very convincing score here in the Breeders' Crown. And George, you've driven so many great horses over the years. Sun Sam, Legend Hanover immediately come to mind. Where does Armbro Fling fit in that roster?
She fits in with a very, very elite group of the best horses I've ever driven, and she is the best 2- and 3-year-old trotting filly I've ever had, and we're going to plan on trying to race her next year, so we'll see how great of an age mare she makes if she stays sound and everything. But it was a great pleasure, and she's been a great filly to me, and it's just a heck of a thing.
Let's take a look at the videotape and watch Armbro Fling, who is in the 2-hole here as stablemate Armbro Flory. Billy Herman sent her to the lead, and were you glad to see somebody come so you could maybe get a little cover on this windy night?
Well, I was sure glad to see my filly, and because I know she trained pretty good last week, and I thought she could carry me on maybe better farther than some other filly in the race, and Billy drove her perfect and took me right to the head of the stretch, and it worked out just exactly, well, not exactly like I thought it would, but after Flory got to the front, then I thought if I got a break and Flory was good, which I thought she would be, then I thought I could win from the middle of the backstretch on.
Billy O'Donnell was first over, and he begins to give ground here. Were you worried about having room to get out with Armbro Fling?
Well, I was watching Flory see how much trot she had, and she carried me on, and she opened up enough where I could get out, and Billy got a little bit tired, so that gave me the break to get out.
Congratulations to George Sholty on winning with Armbro Fling. He's done a masterful job training and driving this filly throughout her career. Let's go back upstairs to Dave Johnson.
Well, there is an inquiry now. It concerns the second place finish. Genuine Comfort did get the photo over Armbro Flory for the second place, but the judges are taking a look at the videotape for possible interference with Crown Starlet earlier in the contest. And of course, we'll follow not only this story, but the prices and the top to bottom finish. And we'll be back after these messages.
RB6. Welcome back to windy Florida, Pompano Park, where Armbro Fling has just won the Breeders' Crown 3-year-old Filly Trot. Congratulations to trainer driver George Sholty, the owner breeders Armstrong brothers. That made it quick to get through that. And presenting the Houghton Trophy, named after the legendary horseman Billy Houghton, is Mrs. Mary Van Lennep, the widow of Fred Van Lennep, who was chairman of the board of Pompano Park until his untimely passing earlier this year. One of the leaders of the standardbred sport was Mr. Van Lennep, instrumental in the founding of the Breeders' Crown. She's assisted in the presentation by John Cashman, the president of Pompano Park. And as far as the win by Armbro Fling goes, Ellie, I guess that makes you 2 for 2 tonight.
You should know better than to argue with a woman, Alan, especially when it comes to horse racing. I really like the mare. She raced Giant, and I'm very, very glad that George Sholty has plans of bringing her back as an aged mare, because a lot of times we don't get to see these 3-year-old fillies come back, because usually they go out to broodmare ranks. But I think she's going to make a super aged trotting mare, and she did a tremendous job tonight.
We'll look forward to her in next year's Breeders' Crown Aged Mare Trot. Let's go back upstairs to Dave Johnson.
Well, the judges are still looking at the videotape to decide if there will be a disqualification, but no doubt about it, Armbro Fling was up to win it.
No question about it. She was just a fifth of a second off the track record, 1 minute 57.3. The record is 1 minute 57.2, held by Armbro Devona, another of the Armstrong brothers fillies that set that 2 years ago. And, of course, Pacific equaled Hit Parade's track record for 3-year-old pacing fillies at 155, set 3 years ago. That's what championship racing and harness racing is supposed to do. Time-conscious sport, and they got fast races tonight.
Stan, let's take a minute and talk about next week while we have a chance, and the judges are still looking at the videotape. Championship racing certainly in store for us, because Napolitano and Mac Lobel are going to be here, and Jate Lobel.
Well, Jate Lobel will have his hooves full with a horse called Call for Rain, who has been a late bloomer and has actually been a very top horse. And, of course, Napolitano and Mac Lobel squaring off for the championship.
It should be an exciting night. We hope that you'll join us 10:30 Eastern, 1 week from tonight. Really one of the great nights in harness racing history right here at Pompano. Be here in person. If not, tune in and watch it live on ESPN next Friday night, 10:30 Eastern. Let's go back to Alan in the winner's circle.
I have one of the most instrumental individuals for next week's show, Tom Houghton, the trainer of Napolitano. Tommy, Mac Lobel and Napolitano have been trading punches for the last few weeks. How important is a win in next week's Breeders' Crown?
Well, Mac's probably the favorite for Horse of the Year, and I think we have a little bit of a shot if we can beat him next week, but that's what it's going to take for us.
Napolitano, of course, will go down in the ledgers as one of the last horses to receive his early schooling from Tom's late father, the great Bill Houghton. The name of the Breeders' Crown Trophy, Tom, also inscribed with your late father's name. How would you like to bring home one of those trainers' trophies this year in your first year commanding the Houghton stable on your own?
Well, it'd be one of the greatest things that could ever happen to us because, you know, like you say, it's the last horse we had in the stable when he was there, and it would be very gratifying, that's for sure.
Tune in next week and see that one. We'll all be rooting for Tommy Houghton. Let's go back upstairs to Dave Johnson.
Well, they are still taking looks at the videotape, and I'm afraid we're not going to be able to give you the official. But from what we gather from our phone calls, the Armbro Fling victory is going to stay up. But the question is simply the place spot, whether it's going to stay with Genuine Comfort or whether it's going to go to Armbro Flory.
Fling is the trotting champion filly, and a very interesting development that she'll be back as a 4-year-old, because that's unusual these days for the 3-year-olds to return, and it's a very bright sign for the sport.
So horse racing, 2 new champions this evening. They secured their crowns, and we're glad that you could join us here at Pompano for the action. Thanks for being with us, Dave Johnson, for Stan Bergstein, Ellie Sarama, and Alan Kirschenbaum. Good night, everyone. Breeders' Crown 87.